Hello and welcome to the Heavy AI podcast, the podcast where we explore the intersection of AI, technology, and heavy industry. I'm Paul Covenant.
And I'm Brad Gingell.
And together we have built Heavy, your AI-powered contract administration platform for heavy industry. Today we are joined by Tim Snell, the founder of Pitcrew AI. Tim has over 2 decades of experience in data science, automation, and cutting-edge technology. With Pitcrew AI, Tim and his team are driving innovation in predictive maintenance and real-time equipment monitoring, helping save costs, improve safety, and boost operational efficiency. We're excited to have Tim on the show today and dive into his journey. So welcome to the show, Tim. And let's start off by giving you a bit of a background on yourself and what brought you to start Pitcrew AI.
Yeah, g'day guys. So it's, as with a lot of people in this sort of industry, it's a bit of a long and winding journey. I guess my background is actually in computer engineering, so I did a computer engineering degree 2001, so a long time ago now, and ended up falling into electrical engineering and consulting roles after that. Starting my consulting business in about 2010 that specialised in computer vision systems. So it was in the days where computer vision systems were quite different to what they are now. So a lot of lines of C++ and C code and analog cameras feeding into encoders and things like that. Things that took months to do.
But now you can just click a button.
You can do it in an afternoon. Yeah. Download a few examples off GitLab and away you go.
Yeah.
So we really sort of focused on that niche. We're doing over the last, over that 10 years or so, did some really interesting one-off and niche applications for big mining and industrial and metal customers. So we really specialize in, not your process line, off-the-shelf computer vision type setup. It'd be more, okay, we're in a steel mill or we're in a mining environment where we've got dynamic conditions and variable lighting, and we need to compensate for all that sort of stuff. I guess Pitcrew was a product we originally developed in the consulting business and spun out as a startup. So Pitcrew, we registered the domain. At the time, it was just a name. Decided it was a product enough to give it a name in sort of February 2020, just as COVID kicked off and shut the world down. And then spent the next couple of years trying to make sales into all kinds of crazy parts of the world, like Mozambique and Colombia, while you're not allowed to get on a plane and go anywhere. And that sort of brings us to today.
Yeah, nice. So the those sort of early stuff that you were doing prior to the Pitcrew stuff, like was that, you said it was around sort of mining and industrial stuff. So you've always been sort of in and around the mining space?
Yeah, I guess anything where there was, a more complex computer vision challenge than just, checking packaging on a conveyor belt with nice controlled lighting. So it was about 2018, we actually decided in the consulting business that we wanted to pivot to be a product-led business. Consulting scales linearly with labour, and
bodies.
As an engineer, managing people is, often not your favourite thing to do. So you want to decouple the revenue from the people if you can. At that point in time, we were sort of kicking around a few product ideas we had. So, one was using thermal imaging cameras to pick up on early stages of the battery fires in the recycling and waste stream. So, everyone throws their AirPods or their whatever in the bin these days, and all those things are little bombs that go into the recycling stream and light recycling stations on fire. So, thermal imaging was a really good technology. You could pick up those things quite quickly. For a bunch of commercial reasons, we decided that wasn't the business we wanted to head into. There were kind of 3 products we were testing the waters with at the time, Pitcrew being one of those. One of the other ones was we were working with CSIRO on a solar forecasting technology. So 360-degree cameras looking at the sky. You use 2 of those and you can stereoscopic image clouds, and you can predict where shadows are going to fall on the earth and predict what solar farms are going to do. So to do that short-term forecasting, we were one of the first firms to get approved to feed that data into AEMO, the market operator, in real time. For me, that sort of product is a challenging one with a longer lens. You kind of look at short-term forecasting, and battery technology is moving so quickly. Are we actually going to care about 5 and 10 minute ahead forecasts once battery technology is connected to everything? Maybe not. Whereas with Pitcrew, we actually started in the on-road trucking space, looking at highway trucks on the M1, picking up brake issues to use as a pre-screening tool in compliance stations, and pivoted the product into the mining industry. And I guess where in mining, the real need came from a tier one miner. They were moving their fleet to an autonomous truck fleet, and all of a sudden they had this spike in the rates of tyre fires they were having on the site. So it turns out the control mechanism for stopping tyre fires for the last 40 years has basically been a driver's nose. Like as a shift change, like you can smell burning rubber. It's a really obvious smell to a human. But you remove the driver, and there's kind of all these unintended consequences that come along that a driver does. All the stuff a driver does that isn't driving. And so for us, we saw this niche opportunity in mining to kind of solve that tyre fire issue. And you apply that same long-term lens, and you think, okay, well, on-road vehicles, particularly say point-to-point heavy haulage, is going to be going autonomous sooner than later, and is likely to experience all of those same issues. You remove a driver, and there's all these unintended consequences of that. So for us, it was like, okay, this is going to be a big wave that's going to emerge at some point in the future. Let's double down. And that's kind of why we ended up picking Pitcrew and heading down this path.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah.
Yes, it sounds like it was very much there's a problem there, and you've got sort of like the market pull to want that solution. Is there, and I guess from that, there's pretty easy to sort of justify a business case to be like, hey, we've gone from having one tyre fire every year to now 10 every month because we don't have bodies on the floor. That sort of like, the extrapolation out to then, I guess from there, where do you see sort of like, what's the end state of Pitcrew around, the field?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the back of the beer coaster business strategy is, right now we're trying to just own that, really narrow niche of tyre inspection, specifically on rigid dump trucks, really big ones, ideally. So 57, 63 trim rigid dump trucks on mine sites, own tyre inspection. I mean, that as a TAM, it's probably a couple hundred systems.
How many tyres are there, mining tyres in the world? Like the stat that you've got.
Exactly. I guess from there, though, as we're deploying these sort of pull road inspection stations, so I guess to touch on that, it's a solar-powered side of haul road station with a few cameras on there and some processing and bits and pieces. But as we're deploying these things to the field, we're also able to capture a lot of data around and identify other sorts of issues with vehicles. So things like radiator blockages or valving issues around hydraulics or fluid leaks or wheel motor failures and things like that. So we'll be in a position at some point where we've got this deployed base that we're able to turn on fairly low net marginal cost additional revenue streams by adding subscriptions for, say, maintenance, predictive maintenance tools for a maintenance plate, for example, using that same hardware. While we're doing all that sort of stuff, we're building out in parallel the highway inspection product. So for us, from a technology readiness level, our highway product is just as developed, if not more developed, than the mining product. It's more of a market readiness issue. So at the moment, we're really working with the top 1% of road truck operators, where they're very proactive about maintenance, and it may be that they have special conditions. They're operating a long way in remote areas, so roadside maintenance is not really viable or very expensive. But I guess as we look forward towards the future, I mean, the reason the market's not ready in general road trucking at the moment is really that it's such a competitive and low margin industry generally. But if you look at the two biggest input costs are labour and diesel, sometime in the next, call it a year, call it 10 years, who knows?
You're going to get rid of labour.
You're going to get rid of labour, and you're going to move to alternative fuels or electrification. So somewhere between 40 and 60% of the cost base just evaporates overnight. All of a sudden, your asset cost is going to be higher because you've got autonomous systems and whatnot on the trucks. So from a P&L standpoint, those utilization rates are going to be what is going to drive your business success. And so for us, if we can move into that predictive maintenance space where we can increase utilization of those vehicles, the business case is going to stand up much, much better. So for us right now with the on-road, we're really just going to be positioned, ready to ride that wave as it crests.
Oh, awesome. And I'm sure as those two major cost buckets come out, tires actually become a larger proportion of the cost base as well. So
potentially, yeah. I mean, at the moment for the road trucks, they're not that meaningful, but at some point, I'm sure it'll be more of it.
Yeah, it's it. That's really cool. And obviously, like you said before, when things go autonomous, you have the increase in incidents. So it will become more of the utilization factor will become more impactful, even without the other impacts of those other costs coming out.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I guess you as a public road user, I think for autonomous trucks to get public acceptance, they're going to need to be an order of magnitude safer than a human operated truck. I mean, we all just accept that, truckies crash occasionally, but we're not going to accept if an autonomous truck crashes into a school bus, right? So I think as a industry sector, it is being very forward thinking in sort of accepting the fact that they do need to be, safer than they've ever been historically if that sort of technology is going to gain acceptance by, and a social license to operate.
No, absolutely. And you guys are kind of a critical part of that.
Hopefully. Trying to be.
Yes. And so maybe, I mean, we can dive into the product more if you like. Like, what is it that makes it tick? You mentioned, obviously, we're looking for heating on tires. How does the AI work to do that? How does, is it the same models that you use for haul road trucks versus on-road trucks?
Yeah, so I guess there's very few companies out there. We're not recreating TensorFlow. We're not recreating the tooling. We're not. There's a lot of great tools available now. I touched on when we were first starting off in computer vision. That was before OpenCV. That was before all this other stuff was available. And these days, you use the tools that are available, and there's some fantastic AI tools out there. So for us, it's really training custom models on this bespoke data sets. For us, I guess the thing that we do differently, we've come from a background of thermal imaging, multispectral and hyperspectral imaging systems during the consulting phase of the business. And a lot of your modern day sort of AI models would be trained on, it's probably getting a bit nerdy, but say they're trained on an 8-bit PNG compressed images, something like that. And so if you're feeding thermal images into an off-the-shelf AI model, you might be, converting to a PNG, feeding in this compressed PNG image, which would be scaled between, some nominal temperature scale, for example. For us, all of our models are built from the ground up using radiometric images. So it does a couple of things. It gives you more bit depth. So 16-bit of bit depth or 24-bit of bit depth, which makes them more sensitive. But it also means that after the fact, you can come back and apply calibration values so that you can pull out a real-world temperature value for any pixel of any frame of any video, which from a predictive maintenance and condition monitoring standpoint is sort of infinitely more valuable than saying that thing's a bit redder than that thing. So for us, it means like the training infrastructure and I guess the plumbing between all of the modules and things that we use has been built from the ground up to support that kind of training and model training workflow. So there's some pretty hefty IP tied up in that. And that's kind of where we stand now. There is a real bias towards thermal imaging right now. There's an element of that's what we know, but I think predominantly the thing for us is all of these issues that we're talking about are mechanical failures, and basically any mechanical system that's not functioning properly is going to get too hot or too cold. So thermal imaging is just a really useful technology for most of the applications we're looking at the moment. Combine that with standard optical imaging and computer vision processes, and you've got a really powerful sort of tool there, right? So much of the heavy vehicle inspection that gets done today is literally just people walking around eyeballing stuff, maybe pointing a temp gun at it. And if you can replace the majority of that with non-contact optical sensing and thermal imaging, then you can supplant a big part of that, missing human from future autonomous vehicles.
How far have you sort of gone down that journey to date? Like obviously the tires is the initial focus, but then you sort of touched on predictive maintenance of everything is sort of where we'd like to get to. How much of it is like to the point where you've got, whether it's drones just flying around workshops, just doing scans of everything as well as your stations, like what's it heading that way?
Yeah. I mean, at some point, we're not operating with some of the big budgets that you see from US-based startups. So haven't gone and deployed the drone fleet just yet. But I guess for us, the on-road stuff, we're doing brake asymmetries, so picking up things like locked calipers or brake failures. We're picking up hub and bearing issues, which is responsible for a lot of the wheel-off events where you see, say, wheels flying off down the road at oncoming cars. Picking up on tyre inflation issues because of heat asymmetries on tyres. So I guess we're starting to build out. And again, because it's less of because of the sort of industries we're working in, they're high value individual customers.
Yeah.
So it's less of a spray and pray, and it's more, okay, let's talk to every single customer and let's find out what are the genuine, ROI for each of these inspections, and let's start from the top. Where are we going to drive the most value? And for say the road trucking, it's brake failures that are responsible for the most public road deaths, right? So obviously you're going to start with brakes and then work your way back from there.
Yeah, so getting into sort of the business sort of side of things, like what's sort of the model that you guys use around engaging with sort of those bespoke customers and then like sort of the value props for, okay, tyres is one, predictive maintenance is obviously a silver bullet to a degree for operational performance and just general utilization factors. Like what sort of the sales pitch that you guys go into these organizations with, and then what sort of the business model that you sort of flow on through, like rather than consulting services, you obviously wanting to be more of a sort of product-led business. Yeah, just without going into the secret sauce too much, give us a bit of the spiel.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things you're always learning about, the value, and it's, to be honest, a lot of customers aren't actually measuring,
any of that.
Potentially, they're not measuring some of those metrics that you need to define value really clearly off the bat. And part of that is a consultative sales process where you're really trying to say, okay, let's unwind this. You say you want X, but what you really might need is Y, because at the end of the day, like if we're talking in the mining sector and the mining trucks, it's very cyclical in terms of what the business drivers are. Like commodities prices drive everything. So when the commodities price is high, for example, tyres are seen as a consumable. It's
like we don't care.
It's all about
throw money at it.
It's all about tons.
Yeah.
Forget the tyres. And in the big trucks, it's really Bridgestone or Michelin are the two OEMs, and tyres are approaching sort of $80,000 a tyre at the moment, right? Even for the big guys buying them. So it's a pretty expensive consumable, but that's just how they're treated. But in the next cycle, where commodities come down, all of a sudden tyres are going to be this invaluable asset that we need to preserve tyre life. So I guess for us, we'll be talking with a customer and we'll be saying, okay, do we want to focus on reducing, planned to unplanned maintenance ratios? Do we want to push more into the planned space so we're not having, unplanned downtime of vehicles? Really trying to focus on production numbers. Or are we saying, okay, we want to be detecting damage really early on tyres so that we can proactively plan repairs, for example, to detect damage early so the repair cost comes down, the likelihood of success goes up, and trying to extend overall tyre life. So it's kind of identifying those business drivers early on. So for us, the main things we'll talk to is uptime and utilisation. We'll talk to tyre life, and then we'll talk to the safety element. So often some of the say that sealed heat separations on a tyre, which is where you can have almost not a fire, but a couple hundred degrees of temperature inside a tyre in between the tread pack. And if that breaks open for any reason, like as it goes from uncompressed to loaded rotation of a tyre, it can kind of crack open that heat separation. You can end up with a tyre fire really, really quickly, which can then result in worst case tyre explosion, which is major risk in a tyre base. So some of those cell heat separations come into tyre bays because they're not venting, you can't hear them, you can't smell them. They'll come into a tyre bay and no one knows about them. So for us, it's like, okay, we can focus on safety and we can say we're never going to let an unsafe tyre come into a tyre bay, for example.
Yeah.
And then if we're talking to sites about tyre repairs, there's huge environmental impacts of that as well. I mean, at the moment, particularly in Australia, we still bury a lot of tyres. We're not recycling them. We're not reprocessing them. So they're just getting dig a big hole and put your tyres in there type stuff. And the tyre stewardship at Australia estimated for those big tyres, it's somewhere in the order of 31 to 32 tonnes carbon emissions in the life cycle of each of those big tyres. So if you're able to extend tyre life by 20% or 30% on average on a mine site, it's enormous, both in terms of cost saving and the environmental impact of that.
Yeah.
No, it's really cool. And I guess, like you said, no matter what part of the cycle you're in, you've got a value prop for whether it's utilization based or cost based. So
safety or environment,
winning on both sides.
Yeah, and it's how you guys would be aware of this. It's how systems end up getting implemented. The implementation piece and the product success piece is almost as important as the product itself. Because if sites aren't doing anything with great AI data, then what's the point, right?
And how much do people have to come in and actively manage the systems once you install them? Is it something that you can just kind of go to a site, install it, and then walk away, or do you need to train people on how to use it? Yeah, what's it look like after you've set it up?
Yeah, it depends on the customer. Because we were kind of, when we kicked off in 2020 during COVID, we weren't going to sites, so we were just sending systems to site. Site was setting it up, and then we might dial in and do some remote training for an hour. So it can be done like that. I think we've kind of reverted back the other way, and we're trying to get more hands-on with customers. Because there's a lot of value in, you guys know what it's like in resources. You've got a revolving door of people on site for a start. So you want to maintain face and get to know people. You want to just say you've got the right site contacts, and you really want to make sure that there is getting value. They are getting value from the system, and really articulating and communicating the value that has been delivered continuously in every interaction with the customer, just so that when it comes to renewal time, there's not a question of do we need this thing. It's more okay, whatever the price is going up.
Just part of what we do day to day. Yeah.
I guess sort of moving into that space, like around sort of what are some of the challenges that you do see around whether it's adoption of the tech or just trusting the tech or just sort of that behavior change. And like I know we've spoken to many people and we have the experience as well of selling into these industries and organizations. Like mining and construction are very much first to be second, or just don't want to be first, full stop. Even though what we're all selling and what we're all offering is great tech, we know what it does, we know there's some good ROI behind it. Sort of, what are sort of some of the challenges and how you overcoming some of those challenges around getting stuff on site, and then that follow up with the training and implementation and trust with what you guys are giving?
Yeah, we're still figuring it out. Same with everybody. But I guess for us, people always say who are your competitors, and for us, realistically, our competitor is doing nothing.
Is a human looking at it with their eyes and a temp gun? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no, a temp gun. No, that's too high tech. It's like tapping it with a hammer, listening for a hollow knock,
and hope it doesn't explode back at you.
Exactly. Yeah. So like you're right. Like there's this real reluctance to tech if it's seen as unnecessary. So for us, it's obviously say that the two-pronged approach, you're talking at a management level and you're talking up from a tire bay technician level, about this is going to make your life easier and safer. But then it's you're right, like that hand. I think our biggest hurdle is, as with any AI system, there's false positives and there's misdetections, right? Like nothing's perfect, and it's AI's a black box that sometimes it gives you results that you're like, what the hell was that about? Like
it's like people.
Exactly. But people are far less trusting of an AI once they get a couple of false alarms or some weird thing that doesn't make any logical sense to them. So for us, that's probably the biggest hurdle is, okay, how do we mask spurious false alarms that would force users to lose confidence in
to lack the trust.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's almost better when you're dealing with, say an automation implementation team or something like that, where they're aware of all of these shortcomings, and they, a bit of noise in the data is just the nature of the beast. But if you're talking to a tire bay and you tell him to, pull a truck out and start swinging wrenches when he doesn't need to, people are pissed, right? So for us, that's probably the biggest thing is how do we suppress any false positives at all getting through to a site without
missing something on the other side of the thing.
missing something on the other side, right? And it's a perpetual balancing act for us. Like, we sort of joked about, and you've seen it with so many AI companies over the years where they're employing armies of people in India or wherever to review every single scan. I mean, we're not quite there, but certainly in terms of our weekly reporting and whatnot, we're making sure, there's human eyeballs looking at reports that are going out, making sure it makes sense to us. And having trained technicians on our side that can support customers to actually talk about that stuff in Thai Bay language.
Are you seeing, I guess, improvements in sort of some of the reliability factors of some of those outputs? Like, is as you guys are developing and increasing, and whether it's reinforcement learning or whatever, like is the instances of the false positives decreasing over time? So hopefully that sort of trust piece can build quicker.
For sure. I mean, for us, that's kind of from we're probably talking inside baseball here. That from our standpoint, if there's a human in the loop team, which is not a 24/7 human in the loop, but a human review type team, our expectation is that team can remain static in size, irrespective of the scale of deployment. But they will always be required because we'll start to turn on new features. So then there'll be false alarms with that new type of detection over time. And I mean, it's the real world, right? So there's always real world variables. The Pilbara last week was, total flood had gone through, and the oil sands was back to minus 40 degrees. And so you get these crazy weather conditions that can bring up new issues you just never knew existed before.
If you've never trained the data on that type of condition, then the AI can't be expected to perform.
Exactly. So there'll be edge cases forever, but hopefully that number of edge cases reduces over time. That means that the edge case review function can remain fairly static.
And I guess I was going to say, and like there's one way. I'm just thinking now from what we're seeing in like generative AI, where you can make the model better, but then there's also the other approach of have the model do its thing and then have it go through multiple versions of maybe another model that checks the first model's work, this kind of agentile. Is there any parallels in your world where it's like, okay, your first model says that it could be too hot and could be about to cause a fire. Then that feeds through a second loop, which reviews it, and then that reviews the next bit. Is there anything like that?
For sure. Like all those sort of mechanisms, like, multi-stage models or multiple models, and then voting mechanisms where, you're trying to improve a robot. They're all options, and at different stages. I mean, for example, for us, we'd have a multi-stage model where we're detecting vehicle class and components of vehicles, and then different types of damage, for example, or different types of inspection. And then there's the usual statistical and data sciencey stuff that happens at that layer again. But at any of those levels, you could implement any of those sort of functions. I guess you're always balancing compute costs versus and time to delivery, like, because everything you stack in there. I mean, we're just paying for Bezos to fly more rockets, right? Like our AWS bill is pretty horrendous. So everything you layer on there, it comes at a cost. So and it's just something you've kind of got to weigh up and balance. I mean, to be fair, that's probably when we kicked off the business at the start of 2020, one of my assumptions, and I was totally short-sighted on in hindsight, was that compute costs would continue to fall, pretty much as it has for the last 25 years, right? And instead, we haven't seen that. It's been almost flatlining in some cases, particularly for GPU consumption, just because of the growth of LLMs and generative AI, right? So one of those key assumptions in the business model has been completely flawed. So then it's, it is a real consideration that we have to make about compute.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, nice. I guess as we're sort of getting towards wrapping up here, how does this sort of like see that sort of, you talk about the human in the loop from your side, but then also the human in the loop on the actual operator's side as well? And do you think that there's, like, as we always say, we're dealing with like labor shortages across the industry, like hesitancy to adopt technology, everyone's sort of looking at the whole problem of like mining's going to be around forever because we need all the critical minerals for renewable tech, battery tech, etc. And yet, like, it's still very glacial in terms of the speed of adoption. Like, I guess sort of riff on that a little bit in terms of like, obviously there's a lot of value that you guys capture. There's potential hesitancy with operators because you trust and not like, and we've obviously got this potential gold standard where there is a bunch of just, autonomous like inspections happening everywhere, and you've got autonomous trucks and everything sort of happening on site. Obviously you want Pitcrew to play a big part in that space. Like, just sort of riff on that a little bit for me. I know I've just rambled for a little bit. I think there was half a question, half a statement in there somewhere.
No, I mean, you're right. I find the mining industry thing, it's really interesting. I mean, you guys probably find the same. You'll go and talk to university students trying to bring uni students on board, and the whole mining industry has kind of got this stink where, young 18-year-olds don't want to be in mining. And it's that conversation of, if it hasn't been grown or farmed, it's been dug up out of the ground. We're not just talking coal mining and oil. We're talking about copper, all the rare earths, everything we see in the built world around us needs to be mined at some point. Exactly.
Your phone, your air conditioning, your car, like
So it's kind of been missed at whatever school level education is happening at the moment. That it is a critical industry and will be for the foreseeable. So there is this, I guess, lack of. I mean, again, I'm going to ramble a bit like you did. It's interesting seeing the difference in, say, Latin America, where in, say, Chile or Brazil, where mining is seen as a sort of prestige industry, and you do have the best and brightest coming out of university and falling into roles in mining companies, whereas in Australia or the US or wherever everyone falls into finance or tech. In Latin America, people will come out and go into mining, and the rate of technology adoption in Latin America is actually increasing, in my opinion, really, really quickly. So for us, LATAM is an absolute key market, because you have these brilliant engineers in management positions in mines in Chile, Peru, Brazil, that are more open to technology because they understand it better. So I think I mean, there's definitely, I agree with you. It's an industry-wide problem that I don't think we're going to solve, the three of us sitting on this call, but definitely see it as well. And I guess the long-term thing is, it's just going to have to be more and more automation, because people aren't going to want to do the dull, the dusty, the dangerous jobs that that traditional kind of sentiment. So it's going to have to be more automation, more robotics, automate as many of these processes as we can.
I think that's sort of my takeaway as well, is it's like the industry is going to be around for the foreseeable. The labor isn't there for the demand that is required for that industry to be around forever. So there's a lot of opportunity for tech companies like ourselves to build solutions and innovations around that whole sort of life cycle to meet the demand that's going to be there for the minerals without the supply of labor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
And in terms of how Pitcrew fits into that broader automation, broader tech ecosystem, I mean, you guys are capturing a lot of really rich data. Have you explored or had ideas for, or what if we integrated with
become a fleet management system or something?
Yeah, exactly. And like, are there other places that you can kind of plug into that broader ecosystem?
One of the hardest transitions for me moving from consulting to a product business was, in consulting, the answer is always, yes, we can do that.
Yeah.
It's going to cost this much.
It's going to cost so much. Yeah.
And moving into product, it's that ability to say no. It has been like one of the hardest transitions I've had to. So honestly, I'm deliberately trying to keep my blinkers on and nail the product we're working on right now before I get too excited and head off in a million different directions. But absolutely, like there is a lot of different avenues we can head towards with this data, and I guess it'll be waiting to see how the market and the industries evolve over the next couple of years.
No, absolutely. And I think very, very sensible, very, very easy to get distracted by shiny objects.
Well, and that's the thing. Everyone wants, like, they have this vision in their own heads to be like, oh, like, we're using this system here and this system here. Your data's here. You should be able to talk to here. It's like, well, you don't even use any of the data that you currently have. Like, let's just plug and play and solve this discrete problem right now.
Yeah,
and prove that you can do that before like working on the next 10 things. Like,
exactly. Let's do a little bit more than just put it on a Power BI dashboard and actually put it to use, right? Let's start there.
100%.
So true.
Well, I think we've solved some of the world's problems in the last half hour. So we've got a couple of closing questions, Tim, just for you as we wrap up, and just talking more broadly around the sort of AI and the future. The first one is, what's your current favorite AI tool that you're using either personally or professionally?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the LLMs are like an integral part of my workflow these days. I'm not really on the tools when it comes to being an engineer anymore, so I'm not using them for coding or anything, but I'm finding the Google Gemini Deep Research, V1.5, that's there at the moment, as bloody amazing. And then I'm still just using ChatGPT for so much stuff. And I found the memory in ChatGPT seems to be a bit better, like in terms of, quickly generating writing in my writing style. I can use ChatGPT and really quickly turn a bunch of chook scratchings in notes in my phone into, a
coherent letter to someone.
Yeah, grant proposals, as pitch. And that PowerPoint deck that's coming up for next week.
yeah, that's well and truly done now. So I guess they're the two I'm using, all the time. 10 times a day at least.
And I guess you mentioned the coding tools. You said you're not on the tools anymore, but I guess are you getting your teams, your engineering teams into some of those tools?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody in the business, and we're about a 25 headcount now, every single person has a subscription to one of the LLMs, for Gemini, Claude, GPT. And we kind of enforce that you use it, and there's a Slack channel of how you're using it. What have you found useful today, just to make sure that knowledge is being shared. Because I think any business that is not using this sort of technology is going to be left for dead. It is a step change in efficiency, right? So for us, we really do make sure everyone is using it. For the coding teams, I mean, the nerds love to run their own, roll your own type local solutions, as well as Claude and GPT. But different engineers are using different tools, but they're all using something.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, nice. And then I guess moving into sort of the problem space, it's like, well, if we could snap your fingers and solve a current pain point that you either have either professionally or personally with AI, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know. If I had a good answer to that, I'd probably be getting distracted by a shiny object in your business, right?
An AI tool that keeps you focused. Blocks out.
I mean, if ChatGPT can get from being, at the moment, I'd describe it as like a decent graduate, it's sitting next to you. Like, if you could get it to be like a decent senior engineer, it'd be life changing. And I don't think that's that far off, right? I think the rate it's changing is incredible.
Yeah, I think your comment around like businesses not getting like into adopting it and just moving with the world, I think it's more even from a personal perspective. There's so many people that are just either blinkers on, ignorant, like, oh no, it's this just fad that is a cool toy, but it's not going to affect me personally. Like my job's still the same. I'm still doing my grunt work and data entry or analysis or whatever. But it's like, you can be doing, like, you'll be doing 10 times, 20 times, 100 times over the next 2, 3, 4 years. And if you're not like jumping on that wave now, you'll be left for dead and you'll be a dinosaur in the graveyard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't see how any professional cannot be using these tools today and still be competitive. Like they're the most powerful tool that has come in my professional lifetime, that's for sure.
Yeah, awesome. And then extrapolating that out on an infinite time horizon, what's the future vision for you for AI? Are we headed for the sort of Terminator Matrix style dystopia, or are we going to be living in utopia with the robots that they've solved every problem? We've just got infinite abundance and we're sitting on the beach doing nothing.
No tire fires anywhere.
No tire fires anywhere.
Yeah. Solving the big issues. This is a bedtime debate for my wife and I pretty regularly. She's very much on the doomer, this all side of
and therefore you just need to stop working in it because you're contributing to the problem.
Yeah. And I'm very much on this stuff's amazing and it's going to solve so many issues. I mean, if we can, the combination of like emerging tech at the moment, like if we can crack fusion for infinite power, like drop the cost of energy to zero, if we can crack quantum compute so that we can start to solve some of the big computational issues we've got, and then combining AI, I mean, I see no reason why the next 50 years is going to be so exciting to see where this goes, in my opinion.
We solve all those problems where we live forever. We have infinite access to resources, whether it's power, food,
exactly,
anything. Awesome. Well, good way of ending it on a positive note. We've had a few of these that have ended sort of in that sort of dystopian note.
It's a risky last question that we've chosen.
And I guess before we wrap up, is there anywhere you want to send our audience to either get in touch with yourself or learn more about Pitcrew AI?
Yeah, I mean, Pitcrew, the business, we're pretty active on LinkedIn. So either search for myself or the company account on LinkedIn, and reach out there.
Awesome. Anything else, Brad, before we close out, or Tim, final parting words?
Fantastic. No, thanks so much for joining us, Tim.
No, thanks, guys. Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. That's it for us today. Be sure to like us and subscribe wherever you're listening to us. And if you'd like to learn more about Heavy, jump on over to our website, which is heavy.app as well. So thanks for listening and have a great day.